So hello everybody, my name is Karen Winter and I am currently the president of the Australasian chapter of the International Marcé Society for Perinatal Mental Health. And we are thrilled to partner with Perinatal Mental Health Week in Australia and to sponsor Day 1, which is all about birth trauma and how we can provide birth trauma-informed care. So I'm thrilled to introduce my colleague, Heather Matner. Heather is a long-standing, loyal Marcé Society member and also a committee member. And I'll hand over to you, Heather, to tell people a little bit more about what you do.
Karen. Yes, I am a midwife. I actually have a background in paediatric nursing, and I'm also an endorsed perinatal psychologist. And the major proportion of clients that I see are experiencing what I'll actually refer to as perinatal trauma, often a lot to do with birth, but also prior to birth and also postnatally as well. And yes, I'm also a committee member of the Marcé Society.
Thank you, Heather. So can you tell us approximately what percentage of women experience perinatal trauma, Heather?
Karen, we think, as we know, about 30%, but the data is very poor. It's not appropriately collected. Given some of the workshops I've been doing across Australia, we could estimate that it might be as much as 60%. And it certainly is known to be in an epidemic proportion in Australia at the moment, but it's very difficult to be precise because no one is actually picking up on this data and accurately measuring it.
Gosh, that's confronting. Thank you, Heather. What leads to birth trauma?
We see continually, and if you look at the literature, it's the same thing as well. There are three fairly fundamental elements that relate to consent, that is fully informed capacity to make a choice, autonomy, and that women being able to be self-determining, and respect. And these three elements continue to recur again and again and again, and then fan out from them all of the implications where they're not adhered to or acknowledged.
Okay. Gosh, that's really interesting. And what happens when people have perinatal trauma, Heather? What happens? What are the consequences?
Perinatal trauma at its simplest could be post-traumatic stress and the symptomatology and issues that sit around that. And obviously in its most extreme form, it can be profound and severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And there are other levels of harm that sit with that. I think most people understand the notion of physiological harm. The notion of psychological harm is only really beginning to be recognised now. And that's why being able to have this talk with you today is so important. We need to help people to understand that we think at the moment the rates of PTSD due to perinatal trauma are at a minimum of 30%. And we know that PND in Australia, perinatal anxiety and depression, sits at a rate in general of about 20%. So we've actually had a kind of reversal in terms of the mental health challenges that we're currently facing for women and their families. And I'm including partners in that when I say families.
Okay, so fathers and other support people can also experience perinatal trauma?
Absolutely, Karen. And one of the difficulties is that that is frequently negated or dismissed, as it often is with women too. Many partners are loath to present to seek help because they feel that they should be strong for the woman who's suffering. And can I say my language is intended to be non-harmful to people. I'm using the word woman because most people understand it. I make no assumptions about the use of the word partner, but partners frequently will feel that they need to be strong, they need to sustain an income, they need to provide the support, and therefore their own needs for addressing what could also be post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress, they're negated as well. And so we're actually not doing a favour to the baby nor to their parents when we're not recognising this and most certainly not treating it appropriately.
Heather, so if I were a mother who was about to give birth for the first time, what would your key piece of advice be for me to avoid experiencing perinatal trauma?
To really prepare well in advance. My colleague Lorraine Newman and I wrote a book a while ago called Better Birth, and in that Lorraine said that women spend tens of thousands of dollars preparing for their weddings or, you know, whatever ceremony they want to have around that. They put so much work and effort and money into that. And then when they get pregnant, they go to their local doctor or their local hospital, not aware that we have models of care to choose from in Australia, that there's a massive swing towards midwifery group practice because we do know it has the best levels of evidence. Many women not aware of that, not aware that they should actually go cherry picking in terms of the venue that they want to go to, the care provider that they want to have, and so on. So I encourage women all of the time to literally go shopping for what is a very important experience in their lifetime, and ultimately make a choice and have decisions that are really going to be in their best interests, not to please anyone else, not to make someone else feel okay or happy, but that they actually can live with for the rest of their lives.
That's really good advice, Heather. Now, what about if I'm a mum, I've already had a child and that was a very traumatic perinatal experience, and now I'm going back to have another one? What piece of advice would you give me then, Heather?
Fundamentally, to seek specific perinatal mental health support from a psychologist with really good capacity in not just the perinatal mental health area, but in fact in managing trauma, perinatal trauma, being able to sit with that and being able to guide women through it to make sense of it and gain understanding from it, to then go on and be very self-determining about these new choices, again, that they will cherry pick and that they'll be very self-determining in, so that they know, as I say to my clients, they're not bringing any shadows of the previous trauma with them into this new experience. They're coming into it strong, they're coming into it feeling well prepared and feeling like and knowing that they've got a voice, and with them comes their partner, which is so important.
Great, thank you. Now, what about if I were a midwife and I'm providing care for women giving birth? What would your key piece of advice be for women in terms of trauma-informed care?
Two things for midwives. One, that they can experience trauma when they're witnessing a traumatic experience that a woman's involved in. It's so important that their own mental health needs are addressed so that they can be strong to advocate with women and believe in women and provide that kind of continuity and consistent support that we want them to. And you can't do that if you're suffering yourself. We don't know what the statistics are, but if we know that 30 to 60% of women are experiencing trauma, there's going to have been a midwife involved in every one of those births, and quite possibly others as well. And they don't walk away from that, as you will know too, Karen, without experiencing trauma themselves. So addressing their own mental health needs is very, very important.
Thanks, Heather. And if I were a psychologist providing care for a woman who's experienced perinatal trauma like you are, Heather, what would you say to other psychologists?
I would say if you don't have expertise in the perinatal area for a start, that it wouldn't be advisable. People will often see postnatal women as simply either being depressed or anxious, and therefore missing the whole paradigm that, of course, we're so familiar with that sits around P&D, perinatal anxiety and depression. We now bring into that paradigm this whole new element of post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you don't have a really good understanding of perinatal wellbeing and perinatal mental health, you're then going to have great difficulty in being able to address the other, I guess, levels of concern that women are experiencing. So I would encourage people to address their own needs for education, or be really professional and really ethical and refer the woman on to someone that they know has got capacity and can therefore provide this woman with the support she needs, because we know this is trauma that lasts for a lifetime. It doesn't just go away. Women take, and their partners take, their experiences of pregnancy and birth with them for the rest of their lives. And so we really need to know that women are getting the very best care, likewise their partners, that they can do.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise with us today, Heather.
A pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.